Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a Friday edition of The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I'm Emerson Latzia. So coming up, Pete Jensen is going to join us from South Florida where the NHL All-Star Game is going down. We're going to dish out some first half awards. Jeff Ulrich will be joining that segment as well. We'll also be visiting some of the fun Super Bowl props, all the real goofy ones you get really weird and creative with on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So Jeff and Pierce there. Oh my God, a NASCAR price check? Hell yeah, brother. But first, let's do the same thing around the NBA. Come on, let's go, Gary and Thorne, Jeff Pratt, Nicholas Fryer. Three of my faves right here, babes. 8-game NBA slate tonight, dudes. Give me the very best guard north of $8,000, Gare Bear.
So I'm going to go full Jeff here.
Oh, no.
And just start being a homer while I still can.
Oh.
Because there's about a week before the trade deadline. I don't know how much longer I get to talk about Fred VanVleet wearing red and white. So let's talk about Fred VanVleet. He's $8,300. Really cheap for someone who's scored at least 40 DraftKings points in 9 consecutive games with a high of 73 in his last game against Utah. This is another advantageous matchup for the point guard. He's going up against the Rockets, who have allowed the most fantasy points per game to opposing point guards so far this season. Up-tempo spot against the Rockets. VanVleet's just been on another level in these last 9 games. He's got a true shooting percentage around 62%. He's averaging 1.25 DraftKings points per minute played, which is really important because he's playing 39 minutes a game because it's the Raptors. So I just think this is a really nice night and nice opportunity to use Fred VanVleet at a price point that's pretty low for him.
From one homer to another, Jeff Pratt, what do you got?
So I do think Fred VanVleet is the obvious choice here. The price is just way too low considering the matchup and what he's been doing lately. As Garion said, he immediately stood out to me. I mean, there are a ton of things trending in the right direction for him. Coming off a 73-point fantasy night against the Jazz. He had a triple-double in that game, which, by the way, is just ridiculous considering the fact that he's 6'1". And I think that listing is a bit generous. So, they're facing Houston tonight. The Rockets quite literally rank dead last in fantasy points allowed to opposing guards. Considering all those factors, he could easily outproduce his price point at just 8.3K. And I also think that if you want to look for a more expensive option, you could pay all the way up for Damian Lillard. He's been producing at an elite MVP caliber level lately, 61 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games. His usage is just through the charts, and the matchup is relatively enticing tonight to get Washington. So one of those two guys.
Young Nicholas Fryer. I say guard north of $8,000 on this slate tonight, and you say who and why?
I'm going to have to go with a guy who I often refer to as the Emerson Latzia of the NBA, and that is James Harden.
Yeah.
9.6K going up against the Spurs. Obviously, they give up a lot of DK fantasy points to opposing guards. And James Harden has provided 5 times value in 9 games last month. He logged over 50 DK fantasy points or over in 8 of those games. And 8 of those 9 games in which he did that, in which he scored at least 48 DK fantasy points, Philly was facing a non-playoff team. And the one exception was the Jazz, who are like 8th in the West and 1 game above 500. He likes to pick on the weak kids. He's going up against the Spurs tonight. Obviously not a good team. He had over 48 DK fantasy points. We saw him earlier in the season. And I think that's at least his floor tonight, but he can easily build on that in this spot.
Did he just drop a 50 burger on the Magic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. He likes to pick on the weak kids like you.
Absolutely, buddy. Bullying works. Everyone remember that, okay? How about a mid-price forward between 5K and 8K, Fryer? Go ahead, dude.
Oh, you got to go back to me. Come on. Kyle Anderson, 5.7K going up against the Timberwolves. I also think Keegan Murray is a guy worth looking at 5.1K coming off an ugly showing, and he's going up against the Pacers. But I want to break down Anderson a little bit more. So 5 times value for him tonight is 28.5K. He's provided that 10 times since the calendar turned over. And he can be a little bit more hit or miss than some of these other guys on here, but his work on the glass and as a facilitator makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about his floor right now, especially when you consider that he's only scored 9 points in each each of the last 3 games in which he's played, and he provided 5 times value in 2 of those 3 games. And he's going up against the Timberwolves team tonight that gives up scoring to opposing forwards quite a bit. So if he maintains what he's been doing in ancillary stats and then adds to his scoring, should be able to have somewhere near a ceiling game for him.
Pratt, price tag on your boy Jason Tatum. It's massive, but he's in great form here, dude.
He is in great form, and I might talk about him a little bit later on this show, but not in this segment. I'm going to look a little bit down the board. And, Nick said that James Harden is the Emerson Lottie of the NBA. I think the guy I'm picking today, Eric Gordon, is more like the Emerson Lottie of the NBA because he's very old. And he's only $5,500 tonight.
Wow.
And he's only $5,500 tonight. And, Garion already talked about he wanted to pick Fred VanVleet because he could be in a different jersey this time next week. I think we could see Eric Gordon in a different jersey this time next week for sure. I mean, he's been very vocal about how he hates his Rockets teammates and the effort that they're putting in on a nightly basis. And he's been doing a great job auditioning for potential trade partners as of late. 28 plus fantasy points in 6 of his last 8 games, including back-to-back 37-point games. His usage rate has been pretty ridiculous for a 5K range player. It's surpassed 20% in 4 straight now. As I mentioned earlier, the Rockets are a bit of a disaster. Worst team in the NBA. They show virtually no incentive to win on a game-to-game basis, but they do have some talented players, and Gordon is one of them. And it definitely helps that there's no Jalen Green or Kevin Porter Jr. tonight, so that should result in a significant bump in usage for him. This is a great spot for Gordon to keep it rolling.
Yeah, I know I tried to tee you up with Jason Tatum, but we are talking mid-price forward here, Gary Bear, between 5 and 8K. And I'm not going to lie, yeah, Eric Gordon, so he tends to go off without Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green, which they'll be without. Just like when Jesse's not here, I have my best shows. It always stays on the rails. Gary Bear, who do you got tonight?
That's a shot.
You know what? I'm going to say that KJ Martin is my NBA Emerson Lottie.
This is ridiculous. I hate this segment.
Are cooler than him. KJ Martin, for a lot of the same reasons that Jeff was talking about with Eric Gordon, just you have to step up and fill a void when there's so many high-end pieces out for the Rockets. They're 2 biggest usage rate guys. So Martin has scored at least 33 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. He's under 6K. I think there's a lot to like here. But if you do want to go in another direction besides the Rockets, keep an eye on Benedict Mathurin, on Buddy Hield tonight. I've got a sneaking suspicion that Tyrese Halliburton may not be available second night of a back-to-back after coming back from a 3.5-week injury absence, after not having an injury restriction at all, apparently, on Thursday night. So if Halliburton gets ruled out, suddenly all this value on the Pacers opens up, particularly at the forward position.
All right, now we could spend some cash here at center. So we're talking dude in the middle at the 5, Jeff Pratt, north of $6,500 here. So how high up are you going to go?
I'm going pretty high up. And I'm not loving the options here, to be completely honest. The pool of centers above 6.5K is relatively slim, and a lot of them are either not producing to the caliber of their price tag or have really tough matchups tonight. In reality, the only one center I love on this slate is Domantas Sabonis. And he had a stretch of somewhat mediocre games over the last couple of weeks, but he finally snapped out of it on Wednesday against the Spurs when he racked up a 34-point double-double, finished with 62 fantasy points. The usage has been there, consistently hitting the mid-20% range. So as long as that happens again, I expect him to produce. It also helps that De'Aaron Fox is out tonight. So Sabonis should become more of a focal point in the Kings offense. And finally, it doesn't hurt that they're facing the Pacers. Indiana ranks 27th in fantasy points allowed to centers. Overall, this is a great spot for Sabonis to put together another strong game.
Oh, dude, we just saw Anthony Davis destroy this Pacers front court as well. Gary Bear, where do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in lockstep with you guys. You look at Sabonis, no De'Aaron Fox, that usage rate is going to climb. He's averaging 1.35 DraftKings points per minute with no Fox on the court so far this season. And like you said, Emerson, I mean, this Pacers team has been undersized all season long. They've been susceptible to really talented big men all season long. And literally last night, Anthony Davis just tore this team apart. I think Sabonis is probably going to be in a similar situation tonight in what is also a revenge game, if you are a connoisseur of revenge games. I also think like Kristaps Porzingis, not in a terrible spot, just like a big total game. But generally speaking, we'll get into some of these guys in a second. I think there's value to be had at the center position tonight. And I wouldn't be like super, super inclined to spend up at center. I'd rather spend up at guard or forward.
All right, what do you want to do here, Fryer?
Yeah, speaking of saving at center, of course, Sabonis, great case. Guys made great points on it. But some guys that you can save with, and the one that's still over 6.5K, Mason Plumlee, 6.7K, going up against the Pistons. Obviously, the Pistons give up a lot of DK fantasy points to centers. So 5 times his value for this price tonight would be 33.5 DK fantasy points. He's achieved that number in 13 of his last 17 games, and he's gone over 40 DK fantasy points, or at least 40 DK fantasy points in 8 of those games. So for me, if you're trying to save at center position, or even maybe fill out that utility spot, Plumlee fits in. Another guy who doesn't fit into what we're doing, and normally I love to abide by your rules, Emerson, that you tend to make up out of nowhere.
Thank you.
But Jalen Duren at 5.4K is another guy you can save with as well in that same game.
And looking at his game log here, last time they played each other back in mid-December, he put up 40 points, man. So that seems like a pretty good return on investment there if you're just dropping around $6,500 on him. Okay, dudes, best overall value play, $4,500. Under that mark here, Garion.
It's got to be Drew Eubanks. There's no Yusuf Nurkic tonight for Portland. That opens up a ton of minutes at the center position. Eubanks hasn't always taken advantage of his opportunities to start for Portland so far this season, but he's been much better as of late. Had one of his best games of the season in Portland's last game against Memphis. A surprising win over Memphis. Dropped 33.75 DraftKings points in that contest. And he's just kind of been a bigger part of this team's rotation in recent weeks than he has in the past. It feels like he's in a good rhythm right now. He's played at least 20 minutes in 6 of the Blazers' last 7 games anyway. And I think it's going to step up tonight with no Yusuf Nurkic. I expect him to draw the start. Anytime you can get a starting center for less than 4K, it's a situation you at least have to like heavily consider.
Oh, definitely. Nurkic has already been ruled out too for tonight, I believe. Yeah. So when he stepped in the other night, 24 minutes, 11 points, 11 boards, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Okay, that's a potential bargain right there. Pratt, what do you want?
Yeah, I'm gonna dip way down here under 4K and roll with Jalen Suggs at 3,600, and it hasn't been pretty for Suggs this season, just to be honest. In fact, you could argue he's taken a step back from last year. He's averaging fewer points, fewer rebounds, fewer assists. That being said, he has been better lately, racking up 25 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. It seems like he might finally be pushing for a larger role in Orlando's rotation. After 8 straight games of playing less than 20 minutes, he's gone over that total in each of his last 3. If that happens again tonight against the Timberwolves, who allow the 6th most fantasy points to opposing backcourts, then Suggs should outproduce his price tag.
Okay, Fryer, hook me up here, man. Best overall value play under $4,500.
I'm also going to go with a guy at 3.6K, and going back to the Kings game, but on the other side of it with the Pacers, Aaron Nesmith at 3.6K. You'd think, Tyrese Halliburton is back, and look, I don't expect him to necessarily play tonight, this being the second leg of a back-to-back, but if he does, that may be great, because Nesmith, even with Halliburton back, just put up 38.75 DK fantasy points, all playing 36 minutes. So probably better if he has Halliburton in the line, because you look at some of the game logs when Halliburton before his injury too, Eastman put up some good fantasy numbers. Either way, he's provided 5 times value in half of Indiana's last 14 games. And when you look at Sacramento and how they defend the perimeter, because obviously that's big for Nesmith, they're not the worst team against 3-point shooters, but they're far from the best still. They're on the worst half of the league. And then when you look at Nesmith too, I know he's like points dependent as a value play, which I don't necessarily love, but he does put in work on the glass. He does get steals, and we have seen him disrupt shots and put up like multiple block performances throughout the season. So I like him in this spot tonight, even without Halliburton. But if Halliburton somehow does play, don't get scared by that. I think that could help him even more.
Nearly 39 DK fantasy points last night with the salary of just $3,600. There you go, man. What happened to the Aaron Nesmith era in Boston, Jeff Pratt? Come on, man.
Oh,
what could have been?
Aaron Nesmith. I'm rooting for nothing but his success in Indiana. It just wasn't the right fit in Boston.
All right, over on the DK Sportsbook here, Gare Bear, favorite bet with a price of plus 120 or longer.
So if we're going long shot,
Yeah.
I'm shocked this is a narrative we haven't tapped into yet on this segment. But guys, we have I was an all-star snub narrative tonight.
Oh,
Guys who
Lord.
just want to go off and put up giant game logs because they think they have to prove they should have made the all-star game. Going back to a little bit of homerism right now, but again, it's just such an advantageous spot anytime any team is playing the Rockets. Pascal Siakam 3-1 plus 300 to record a double-double tonight. It's something he's already done 18 times this season. He's done it a couple times in his last 5 games. Up-tempo script. He can get you 10 rebounds or 10 assists, depending on the matchup. I think 3-1 is a little long for Siakam to record a double-double. And again, it's going to want to make some people mad who didn't vote for him for the All-Star game last night.
All right, Fryer, what do you got?
I think Garen makes a great point, but I'm going to stick with just a simple game bet. I'm going to go with the Magic as underdogs tonight, going up against Minnesota. If you want to take the points, by all means, go ahead. They are getting sharp money over there, and with it being a smaller spread, it's at last I checked, it was 5.5, might be 5 right now. But still, that's enough room for things to get a little bit messy. And this Magic team is coming off a month where they beat the Celtics, they split a series with the 76ers. Those were road games, and they won the first road game. It makes sense they lost that second one, and then they lost close games to the Nuggets and the Heat, which again would have covered 5.5 points in both of those games. And you look at Minnesota, not that great straight up when they're favored at home. 9-7, still over 500, but at home you'd think they'd be better when favored, and that's straight up against the spread. They're 6-10 at home as home favorites. And then with the Magic too, as road underdogs, 13-10-1 against the spread. Again, we're talking about the money line here. That's plus 170, but I think you can go either way here. Maybe split it up tonight.
Give me a good plus money bet here, Pratt.
I picked against the Celtics the last time I was on the show, and they proceeded to blow Brooklyn out of the water. So that was clearly a sign that I should never pick against them again. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going with a Celtics player prop. I hinted at it a few questions ago. I'm taking Jason Tatum to record a double-double, which was at plus 125 the last time I checked. And I'm honestly somewhat surprised that this prop is at plus money, considering how often he's been doing it lately. He's recorded a double-double in 4 of his last 6 games. He was 1 rebound away from doing it against the Nets on Wednesday. He's now averaging 8.7 boards on the year, which is almost 1 more than his previous career high. I expect him to stay active on the boards again tonight. He should definitely contend for another double-double.
Gary, and is your boy Siakam the biggest all-star snub?
I don't know. I mean, Eastern Conference is kind of just stacked. I think there's a case to be made for James Harden. I think there's a lot of cases to be made, honestly. But I think it's a weird time where you can say, like, the East probably had more potential all-stars than the West.
Yeah. What do you think here, Pratt? I mean, Butler's an option there. I mean, Harden, as he mentioned, Anthony Edwards, for crying out loud.
I'm tired of people giving Jimmy Butler the benefit of the doubt just because of his name. He didn't deserve to be an all-star this season. The Heat weren't good enough. He's been way too passive for most of this year. So on that end, he should not have made it.
Okay.
I think that Siakam definitely has a case for sure. He's having the best year of his career, even if Toronto isn't playing that well from a team perspective.
All right, Nick Fryer, your favorite bet tonight, overall, any price, hook me up.
So there are two that kind of jump out to me. One, they're both at plus 100. The Hawks go. I love them in this spot tonight. They're 8-11 straight up as road underdogs. And look, I understand like that's not great, but when you look at the rest of the league, that's actually tied 7th for the best record as road underdogs went straight up in those spots. Utah does take care of business at home, but not often enough where I'm going to be worried about them. And then another one, just to get real specific, I'll be quick on this one, but Hornets at Pistons, first quarter total. I want the over. Right now it's at 62.5 points. That's again at plus money, but you need to wait until LaMelo Ball plays. Like, so we're confirmed that he is in. If he is not playing, then I would stay away from this one. But if he does play, I'm not going to be too phased what the number is either way, but I like it at 62.5. I might, if it gets to 64, I might stay away. But again, LaMelo needs to play.
Gare Bear, your favorite bet tonight?
So I'm going to go right back to that game. For the entire total, it's at 240. These are 2 fast-paced teams. Generally speaking, that is a successful equation to hit the over, but a strategy that's worked out pretty well on this show the last couple of weeks is just find the highest total on the slate and bet the under. And the reason to believe that's probably going to work tonight, Charlotte has a terrible offense. Their last 5 games, they have the worst offensive rating in the NBA by a pretty significant margin. They've actually failed to score 100 points in 2 of their last 5 games. It is 2023 in the NBA. How are you not scoring 100 points? Like 115 is like the average at this point. I just have a feeling that more times than not, the Hornets can't carry their weight to get this number that high. And it's not like the Pistons are an amazing offensive team either. So I think one of these 2 teams will struggle, and it won't get all the way to 240.
All right, Pratt, bring us home, babe.
I'm also going to be taking it under here, and there are quite a few inflated game totals on today's slate, as Gary mentioned. I'll highlight under 233.5 for Sixers Spurs. And this honestly feels like a game that could go well under, and the numbers back that up. Each of the last 2 games involving Philly have gone well under that game total, but they're not really the problem here. The Sixers are capable of hitting 120 points almost regularly. The issue is the Spurs, who have only scored more than 110 points once in their last 5 games. The Sixers, they're one of the slowest teams in basketball. They're ranked 23rd in pace on the year. So San Antonio is going to be getting up and down the floor even less than usual. Philly could go for 125 in this game, and the game total could still go under because the Spurs end up in the 90s.
All right, guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this roast this morning. Well, all 3 of you seem to be very happy. Okay, so have a great weekend. We're gonna everyone knows we end the NFL season, right, with the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl, and NASCAR. It's complete opposite. So they're gonna start the season with the Clash at the LA Coliseum. That's in 2 weeks. Remember this last year. It's a fun, unique event. Their biggest event, the Daytona 500, as well, will follow. So without further ado, this is the moment NASCAR fans and Sweat fans have been jonesing for. Pierce Dietrich back with your first NASCAR price check of the season.
Welcome to the Price Check. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Let's look at the salaries for the Clash at the LA Coliseum. Whose salary jumped up this week? Christopher Bell. Average salary last season of $9,000. He's up to $9,700. DraftKings must have read my sportsbook article because the 3 biggest increases were 3 of my 4 picks this week. Bell is a great short track racer. Joey Logano, average salary of $9,600. He's up to $10,200. He's the defending Cup Series champ. He's also the defending champ of this very race. Ryan Preece, $5,500 average salary. He's up to $6,000. In competitive equipment, in the Craftsman Truck Series and in the Xfinity Series, he's won races. He's now going to be running for Stewart Haas Racing, and he's a very good short track racer. Whose salary dropped this week? Martin Truex Jr. Average salary last season of $9,800 down to $7,300. 2022 was a winless season, but it wasn't necessarily a bad season for him. The car, the team, the driver, all are much better than this price tag. Austin Cindric, average salary of $7,800. He's down to $5,600. Too cheap for a Team Penske car, too cheap for the 2020 Xfinity Series champ and almost the 2021 Xfinity Series champ. AJ Allmendinger, $7,600 down to $5,800. His teammate nearly won this race last season, got wrecked at the end, but Colleague knows this track, and this track suits AJ's driving style. Favorite play of the week, Ryan Blaney, $9,300. Very good short flat track racer. Team Penske, very good at the short flat tracks. Has a great chance of getting the pole, and from there, it should be easy. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., $5,000. The more things change, the more things they stay the same. Stenhouse back on the price check, and this is his lowest price ever. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or not. All right, guys, check out DK Nation for all your DFS information you need. If you got NASCAR questions, find me on Twitter at Race for the Prize. I'm Pierce Dietrich. Catch me on DK Live.
All right, the NHL season officially surpassed its halfway point on January 11th. We're at the All-Star break right meow. So let's go back and determine the winners and the losers from the first half of the season. Look at those points leaders on your screen, the usual suspects. We're going to do this right now. Do that thing you like with DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and NHL.com senior editor Pete Jensen, who is rubbing it in that he is down in warm South Florida, the raging Atlantic Ocean behind him when we are preparing for -50 wind chills here in Boston. Pete, you look great. You look tan. You look happy. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. Looking forward to the skills competition with DraftKings Sportsbook, of course, on Friday night, and then the All-Star game on Saturday at 3 p.m., ESPN, ABC. It's a great weekend. I mean, with this beautiful weather, right? All the stars have come out, even Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby's here, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Cale Makar. The list goes on. It's a really star-studded event this weekend. Looking forward to it.
Anything else you would like to say about the free-to-play pool?
Yeah, so we did some questions, worked together with you guys at DraftKings, came up with some questions for the skills competition on Friday. It sounds like there's about 10K entries right now for a free-to-play contest around some of the, hardest shot competition and accuracy shooting, who's going to win, will they reach a certain threshold or number. It's a pretty fun game, and definitely play it and watch the event on Friday night.
Yeah, $2,000 in total prizes there. Jeff, how peanut butter and jealous are you right now that you're not down in Florida? Look at that. There's like a jet ski rolling behind Pete's right now as we speak. That should be us. That should be all three of us on a banana boat right now.
I just saw LeBron and Dwayne Wade behind him. Yeah. Look, I'm pretty jealous. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, they could have had the All-Star game up here in Edmonton, where it's super awesome. Tons of palm trees. You just can't see them because there's no window in here, but there's lots of palm trees out there. No, there's not. Yeah, I'm jealous, man.
I know, dude. All right. So, guys, let's do some mid-season awards here. So let's recap kind of the first half of the NHL season before all the fun starts down there on the beach with Pete. And maybe we can predict a little bit here ahead of the second half. Like, I don't care what your definition of MVP is, Pete. Like, it's Connor McDavid. Who is your first half Hart Trophy winner? And do you anticipate this man hoisting it come the end of the regular season?
I mean, barring injury, it's going to be McDavid. Yeah. He's on pace for he could hit 150 points and shatter his previous career high in points. And that has already, dictated the past 5+ years of the NHL. He's been leading the category pretty much every year. So it's got to be him. That said, there are a couple of big surprises. Wanted to give Jack Hughes a shout out for having a career year, and the Devils very quietly a top 5 team in the NHL. And then how about the Buffalo Sabres? Tage Thompson, of course, dealing with an injury right now, so he's missing All-Star Weekend, unfortunately. But a 6'6" wrecking ball, super highly skilled goal scorer that has taken the league by storm this season. If the Sabres make the playoffs and end their 10+ year drought, and Connor McDavid, say, deals with an injury or something like that, you can make a case for Tage to win the award.
Okay, Jeff Fulrick, I really don't care whether your boys there in Edmonton make the playoffs. If this dude was not on this team, your team would squarely be in the draft lottery. The same, the same simply. You cannot say the same for a vast majority of the league's best players here.
It's true. It is true. Connor McDavid is obviously the engine that runs, and I mean, he should be. I mean, he's clearly head and shoulders the best player in the league. So of course he's going to be the best player on your team and drive the action. But I'd like if Connor McDavid was just on pace to have his, say just meet his usual expectation, like his career averages, there'd probably be a closer spread here. You may even see Pasternak or even a guy like Jack Hughes potentially get in there and be closer to the odds in him. But the fact that he's leading the league in goals now as well, and on career, point per game basis, it's just, I mean, he was already the best player in the world, and now he's taken it to a completely different level. I think people still just, obviously there's, hockey is a bit of a smaller sort of what you call viewing audience. People just don't realize how dominant a player you're getting to see right now. I mean, this is Novak Djokovic in tennis. This is just the cream of the crop with Connor McDavid. Yeah, we could talk about injuries here, and I agree. If something happens to McDavid, guys like Jack Hughes, I mean, Tage Thompson, these are interesting names that could potentially jump into this conversation, but you're just praying for an injury, betting against him. He's going to win the Hart Trophy. He is really the only guy you need to talk about in this category.
I mean, Pete, do you feel like the hockey world could possibly take this dude for granted because he just continues to drop jaws on like a nightly basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do a little bit. When I was talking to Jack Hughes yesterday, and I mentioned the fact that Hughes was in the MVP conversation, he still said, you know, he thinks McDavid head and shoulders, like Jeff said, above the rest of the league. And he thinks, Hughes, that McDavid, when it's all said and done, will go down as the best to ever do it, which I think is interesting because what would hinge on that is he needs to win the Stanley Cup, right? He hasn't even made it yet. He got close last year, but they got swept by the Avalanche, the eventual champions. Are they a stronger team than last year? I'm not so sure. You can make the case that they're better in net with Stuart Skinner and Jack Campbell, but you could also say that that tandem isn't good enough to help them win the cup, which I would probably side with as well. So I think McDavid's legacy is there for the taking to be the best player of all time if he wins at least one Stanley Cup, which will be a very difficult thing with how the cap is looking up in Edmonton.
Dragging an otherwise pedestrian roster into playoff contention, Jeff Ulrich. Let's look at best defenseman. I feel like there are multiple guys worthy of being awarded the Norris here. Ulrich, right now, first half, how tough of a decision is this for you?
I mean, first of all, did you describe the Connor McDavid on the Oilers or me on this show every day? Look, this is a way more interesting category to talk about, the Norris. Karlsson is, I mean, what a bounce back. I mean, you talk about story of the year, like after Connor McDavid, this guy was just like, you know, playing out his time, so to speak, in San Jose. What a bounce back season. You know, the talent was always there for Erik Karlsson. I'm not sure why he took like a 2-3 year hiatus from being an elite player, but he's back. And this category is very interesting. The problem with Karlsson, the problem with betting on him right now is the Sharks just stink. And they're not going to be in the playoff conversation at all. And Karlsson is definitely, you know, sort of a bit of a, you know, a comeback story and certainly going to get votes from there. But you've got guys like Rasmus Dahlin there at only 22. He has played massive minutes for the Sabres since coming into the league. And now the Sabres are good. And you just kind of feel like, as Pete mentioned, if the Sabres get in here, I really think that people could start looking his way. I think there's interesting value there, plus 425. Certainly, like Cale Maker and Adam Fox both have won this award before, but I would really look to Dahlin in this award right now. I think that as the season wears down towards the end, you may see a little bit of the love for Karlsson drift away because of just how irrelevant the Sharks are. So I like Dahlin a lot. Sabres are in the news. He's really, really talented, like you said, up there in assists as well. So that's where I would be looking for this award.
All right, what about you here, Pete? Because it seems like looking at numbers and all the analytics here, like Adam Fox, dude. Adam Fox has just been the complete package.
Yeah, he has. And I don't think the Rangers have put their very best foot forward. So if they do make a trade for Patrick Kane or something like that and bolster the whole team outlook, and the Rangers are getting more recognition, and say, like Jeff was saying, the Sharks might fall off. The Sabres, if they're missing Tage Thompson, or if they go into a losing streak, they might fall off. So then you're looking at the likes of Cale Makar, like we were talking about. I mean, Adam Fox has won the Norris Trophy before, so that always helps. You know, we've seen multiple winners in the past, like Erik Karlsson has won the award twice in his career. So you have to look at that narrative as well when humans are voting on the award. And then two other guys to really shout out for excellent seasons that are under the radar. Josh Morrissey, Winnipeg Jets. I don't think he's going to have enough popularity to win the award, but he's been carrying that team along with Connor Hellebuck from the back end out. And then also Dougie Hamilton is having a major bounce back season. He's overshadowed by Erik Karlsson because Karlsson's on pace for 100+ points right now. But Dougie Hamilton and Jack Hughes have totally revived the New Jersey Devils franchise this year.
Yeah, for sure. Pete, as for the Vezina Trophy right now, I feel like it's been mostly a 4-horse race for a lot of the year. Who's the clear first half winner in your eyes?
It's got to be Linus Ullmark, Boston Bruins. He's only had a couple of losses on the whole season. I thought Jeremy Swayman was going to really run with the starting job this year, not so fast. It's been Ullmark as by far and away the most dominant goaltender in the league for the far and away best team in the Boston Bruins. Connor Hellebuck's up there, like I said. Jake Ottinger. Also, I wanted to mention Ilya Sorokin after the Islanders just traded for Bo Horvat. You know, this guy has been standing on his head all season long with the best shutouts per game average in his NHL career among active players. I mean, the guy's ridiculous, and he doesn't get a lot of goal support. So if Bo Horvat, a top 10 goal scorer, a top 10 power play goal scorer, revives the offense a little bit, you could be looking at renewed Vezina Trophy futures appeal on Sorokin without a doubt.
Okay, yeah, and I know Olmark's down there in his first NHL All-Star game as well, so you'll be able to see him in action this weekend, Pete. I mean, Jeff, he definitely benefited from playing in front of a Bruins team that reached the 30-win mark faster than any other team in NHL history. Is anyone else in the conversation here?
Yeah, no, I think this one's interesting as well. Like Allmark at -150. I mean, clearly the stats bear it out. He's top of the league. The wins obviously help him as well. But, you know, in a way, playing on the Bruins probably won't help him when it comes time to vote, because people say, well, you know, the Bruins are just so good. Of course, it's going to have a good record. I think there's a little bit of something to that as well. The other thing that goes against Allmark here, he's played a lot fewer games than both Hellebuck and Sorokin. I like Ilya Sorokin in this category as well. He's got the shutouts. If the Islanders make the playoffs, he's going to get a lot of credit for it. I mean, the stats were pretty much there with Allmark, and he's playing in front of a worse team. If he play, you know, right now he's played 6 more games than Allmark. If that extrapolates to, like, you know, he plays 10 more games, has the same kind of save percentage, and the Islanders win or make the playoffs, excuse me, like I think he'll get it. I really do. I think Ilya Sorokin is the kind of player that Vezina voters will want to target. A guy who's carried their team into the playoffs, hasn't won the award yet, and needs some recognition. So I think there's good value there at +600. I do.
Ulrich, who's been the most surprising team in the first half? I mean, Dallas and Seattle leading their divisions are 2 teams that come to mind.
Yeah, the Kraken are, you know, they're just a cool story. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people were kind of, I think they wanted to get on Seattle last year, and a lot of people made the case they might come out and be good, kind of like Vegas was, but they just weren't. But credit to the management there. They made some serious offseason changes. They got in the young talent, and, you know, like their goaltending bounced back a little bit. This team is really dominant 5-on-5. They create a lot of scoring chances. Seattle is also like benefiting from playing in, you know, the West. And I mean, you know, it's a little bit more wide open there, but I think the other team that's super just, you know, to me, there's 2 teams. It's Seattle in the West, and it's the Devils in the East. I think people expected the Devils to take a jump at some point, like in the next year or 2. But I don't think that people expected them to go from 0 to like potentially one of the top 5 teams in the league this quickly. You talk about 5-on-5 stats, you know, XGF percentage, you know, creating chances 5-on-5. This team is like top 3 in the league. They're just dominant. If they get good goaltending down the stretch or into the playoffs, this is a team that can knock off anyone. They can play with the Bruins. They can play with the Hurricanes. So I actually think the Devils, just with how big a jump they've made, is the most surprising to me.
Okay, which team you going with here, Pete?
I agree with the Devils, and just to add to what Jeff said, you know, when we talked already about Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton, that impact. How about Vitek Vanacek? Is really one of the most productive goaltenders, most efficient goaltenders in the league this season, winning games left and right. They picked him up in a trade with the Washington Capitals. And, you know, that's a guy, like when we mentioned Seattle, remember he got taken in the expansion draft and then got traded back to Washington. Didn't work out there, but he's like been playing great for the Devils this year and has solidified their goaltending. Last year they had the offense when everybody was healthy, but the back end, and Hamilton had a bad season. The back end was terrible last year, and it's all been solved in one season thanks to a very underrated offseason move for Vitek Vanacek.
Most disappointing team now, Pete. The Penguins can start playing better on the road. I mean, perhaps they'll make the playoffs for the 12th season in a row. AJ's not here, so you can hammer away on him, Pete.
Yeah, there are some disappointing teams, certainly with Johnny Gaudreau going to Columbus, and they're tied for dead last in the NHL. I mean, that's a big problem. I don't think he would have seen that coming. They do have some young talent, though, so maybe things get better in the future. And they've dealt with a rash of injuries, like Zach Werenski's out for the season. So Columbus, you know, I think more people were probably gravitating towards them to be an improved team in the Metro rather than the New Jersey Devils, but it hasn't worked out that way at all. And then out west, the Calgary Flames. Of course, they lost a lot in the offseason. They lost Johnny Gaudreau. They lost Matthew Tkachuk, right? They really lost some key pieces to their top line. but in turn, they got key players as well, like Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar. Their goaltending with Jacob Markstrom has been the biggest disappointment of all because they have pretty good underlying metrics. They have a favorable second half schedule, so there still is time for the Calgary Flames to redeem themselves. But people took Jonathan Huberdeau in the first 2 rounds of their fantasy drafts, and my goodness, that is the biggest single disappointment so far this season. He struggled to adjust with the change of scenery.
Most disappointing team, Jeff?
I mean, it's the teams that are involved in that trade. Yeah, I would go with the Flames and the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers, I think a lot of people expected some regression from an offense that was, just hitting at historic rates last season. But I mean, they're behind the Islanders and the Sabres right now. Just to make the playoffs, they've got to go through multiple teams now. They've really dug themselves a hole. And, it's funny. I mean, the offense for them is still there, but the goaltending's regressed. The defense isn't as good. So, yeah, this trade just really has not worked out for both teams. I know there were some people calling, too, for the Flames potentially to be better, but I think what you're seeing is, certain players are just going to fit in certain systems better. And I really think, like, Tkachuk was just a better fit for Calgary overall. So what you're seeing with both these two teams too is just how volatile goaltending can be. Markstrom was just insanely good last season, regressing a little bit to that career mean, I think, in Calgary. And I think that's hurt them more than anything. But yeah, that trade, as interesting as it looked on paper and the potential there for both teams to maybe even be better, it just hasn't worked out. And I think they're both two of the most disappointing this season for sure.
All right, Pete. Bruins on fire here most of the season. Powerful, really, on both ends of the ice. And 7 points ahead of Carolina. And that's including their most recent 3-game losing skid here. You pick Carolina and Colorado for your preseason Stanley Cup matchup. Will allow you to change that now.
I'm sticking with it. I still think even with the injury to Max Pacioretty, that's disappointing, but it frees up some salary cap space for them to make a move before the deadline. Hopefully, for their sake, they could add a number 2 center, someone like Ryan O'Reilly, maybe if he's healthy. There are a lot of options for Carolina to work with, try to bolster their unit and kind of create an arms race with the Boston Bruins, who they did knock off in the playoffs last season.
Yep.
So remember, these teams have met many times in the playoffs. Would not be surprised at all with them being in separate divisions if they met again in the Eastern Conference Final. And then for Colorado, I mean, when their guys are healthy, they've dealt with a ton of injuries to McKinnon, Makar a little bit. Nichushkin's been out lately more times than he's been in. But the goaltending in Colorado has been a real pleasant surprise. I thought that was going to be a weak point for this team, and they're borderline top 5 in the NHL in team save percentage with their new goalie, Alexander Georgiev. Remember, he was the backup with Shesterkin with the Rangers. He's proven he's a bona fide starter in this league, and they could still plug and play with Pavel Francouz. So the goaltending in Colorado can definitely take them back to at least the Final Four, maybe the Stanley Cup Final, where it would be anyone's game and they would have a great chance to repeat like the Lightning did a couple years back.
All right, Jeff, after all the hockey you've watched now up to this point on Friday, February 3rd, who's kissing Lord Stanley come June?
I'm going to go with the Devils from the East. I think they can hang with anyone. I think they're a young team, and I think, they're going to catch some of these veteran teams off guard in the playoffs. And, the West is absolutely wide open. I'm going to go with the Oilers. I think this is the perfect opportunity for, maybe it's a little bit of a less, deep Oilers team, but this like, who are we trusting here? Colorado hasn't been getting it together all season. The Kraken, I don't know how much, how much you want to give to them in their first season being good. Dallas is good, but I think you see the Oilers make some moves at the deadline and you're going to get a New Jersey Devils Oilers Stanley Cup. I think the Oilers and Connor McDavid gets his first win this year.
Love it, baby. Pete, don't forget your sunscreen down there, dude. And Jeff Ulrich, hang out because we got some Super Bowl props, a lot of the fun ones. Let's get weird right after this break.
Yeah.
All right, last block of the show, and we're propping off. Pierce Dietrich, welcome to the program today on this fantastic Friday. Jeff Forwick is back as well. So, specials and novelty props ahead of Super Bowl 57 next week. Do not forget, we're on Radio Row all week, bringing you this show live. Jeff's going to be hanging out with us. We're going to be able to see you in person, you wearing your tube socks and your Crocs. Yes. Favorite kickoff prop pick. What do you have here, Jeff? You can take opening kickoff to be a touchback, total kickoff returns, total kickoffs, total touchbacks. What direction do you want to go here?
Oh, so many kickoff props. This is just, I mean, wow, we're so lucky. Opening kickoff to be a touchback, no, at plus 160. Yeah, let's do it. Let's really dive into the stuff here. What do they use on the opening kickoffs, Emerson, for the Super Bowl? They use a commemorative ball, which I have heard through the grapevine in my internet searches. It weighs heavier than a regular ball. And we've only had 3 touchbacks since they did the rule change in the Super Bowl, whatever, I don't know, 2 decades ago. This actually doesn't happen as much as you think. The touchbacks, I know it's in a dome, but Jake Elliott, Harrison Butker, they really haven't been that good at touchbacks either over the last 3 weeks. Another, research factoid that I came up with. I'm going to go no. I think plus 160. You're actually getting a little bit of decent value here on this prop.
Okay, that is already down to plus 140. No, by the way, on people are watching, people are listening to you, Jeff Ulrich. Pierce Dietrich, give me a kickoff prop here.
I'm going to go on the opposite side. I say that we are going to get a touchback.
Yeah.
No.
So, Jeff's going to go with the angle of the ball being heavier. Well, I'm going to go
commemorative, Pierce.
Yeah, well, it's a Super Bowl, and so, maybe the ball is like a milligram heavier. I'm using grams because that's what the Canadians like to do. I'm trying to make it sure that's relatable for Jeff so he understands. But what's really going to happen, it's a Super Bowl. The kicker is going to be jacked to the tits. He's going to just absolutely crush the ball into the stands. Everybody knows it's going to happen. Yeah, Jeff's right. These guys have not necessarily been the best touchback artists, if that's such a thing, but they have ranked inside the top 12 in terms of touchbacks this season. And if you look really closely at the stats, which unfortunately I did, if you look at Philly on the road, number 1 when it comes to touchbacks. If you look at also with Kansas City, they jump up to the 6th highest touchback rate. So when you get these guys out of Philadelphia, out of Kansas City, which aren't really the most friendly kicking environments, you put them in the dome, this thing is going through the post. Touchback for sure.
I don't know. 17 out of the last 20 Super Bowls, we have seen a return to opening kickoff. So the last 2 decades right now, you've got a prop with an 85% hit rate. You can get plus 140 odds on, like right now in the DK Sportsbook. I don't really know. But anywho, I know everyone got burned on it last year too. Let's stay with kicking. Favorite field goal or punting prop right now, Pierce? I feel like this is your bread and butter. Both teams to make a 33-yard field goal. Kick to hit the upright, punt to result in a touchback.
Yeah, it seemed like it was going to be a dream segment, something that I always wanted to do. And now that we're doing it, this is not fun. I don't know if I like this at all. I completely regret wanting to do this. I will go with no touchbacks from the punters. And look, I just don't expect Philadelphia to punt the ball that much. So the fewer punts, the less likely they're going to put the thing back into the end zone. And then I also don't expect that Kansas City is going to cross the 50-yard line that much. So how often are they going to be in a situation where their punter is going to be trying to do a coffin corner? I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. So I'll take the no touchbacks from the punts. And then maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe the offenses are just rolling in this game, which I don't expect. But if that's the case, and you have fewer punts there as well. So no touchbacks.
What do you think here, Ulrich?
The no touchbacks one, I don't hate. I'm going to go really simplistic on this kicking prop. I'm just going to go to the player props and go Jake Elliott over 2.5 extra points. Okay. And this is just, what are we asking for Philly to get like 3 touchdowns? This is, Pierce and I think this is going to be a blowout. So, Jake Elliott, he's probably going to be kicking extra points all day. I think this is a pretty fair one. I do like Philly to get, potentially 4, maybe even 5 touchdowns. So, yeah, I'm going to take Jake Elliott. You get even odds. I like it. I think at the very least, all you're fading here is just like a potential 2-point scenario. I think there's a very, very good shot that Philly finds the end zone 3 times. So keep it simple. Go to the player props. I like the overs on Jake Elliott in this game.
I mean, I feel like it's the first time in these kicking markets too, like bettors have found Elliott favored over Bucker to like exceed expectations there. Favorite touchdown props? I mean, take your pick here, Jeff.
So touchdown props. Okay, there's a couple here that I like. So first touchdown. Rushing plus 180.
Yes.
You've got a Philadelphia team who was like, very bottom of the half in terms of red zone pass attempts this season, despite being in the red zone a ton because they were such a good offense. You've got Miles Sanders, you've got Kenneth Gainwell, you've got a rushing quarterback. And then also you've got the Chiefs here, like when they get down, are they really going to be passing the ball that much against the top rated pass defense in the league? I think this is really good value, plus 180. Surprised to see it was available at that big as well. So I would fade the passing for the first touchdown, especially. I think that's good. And then the other one that I don't mind here, first to happen, any touchdown or any sack. You can get any sack at minus 105. We're talking about the best D-line in terms of pressure in the Eagles. And then the Chiefs are right up there as well. I mean, I'll take that. I'll take a sack before a touchdown. I think you can see a sack on the first play by the Eagles. So couple props there. I don't mind for touchdowns. But the main one, again, with the nice odds there is first touchdown rushing at plus 180.
Quarterback to have a receiving touchdown plus 4,000. I know it's no longer Doug Peterson, but could there be a Philly special 2.0, Pierce?
No. No, Jeff is right. The rushing plus 180 is an absolute steal. I cannot believe we're getting plus money on this. I don't need to echo what he has already said about why the rushing prop works pretty well in this situation. I thought it was a boring play. I thought it was a very conservative approach and that it should be the favorite. It's not for whatever reason, but that's kind of my approach, is to make the boring picks. That's who I am. That's why I didn't get invited to Phoenix this week. That's why I won't be at the Waste Management Tour, and I won't be on Radio Row, and I won't be able to talk about guys like Noah Gray all next week. So I might as well talk about him now. If you want to go plus 900 on other picks, Noah Gray, tight end that we have mentioned for tons of showdown matchups. Great star out of Duke, one of the best tight ends in 2019 in the college season. So if you're not going to go with the obvious rushing play, then maybe other touchdown at plus 900.
Hey, I just want you to know, Jeff and I both threw out a pity invite to you yesterday, and you disrespectfully declined. So I don't want to hear it. You were invited. It was a pity invite, but still.
Invite me after the fact.
Yeah, I just invited myself to this, so I mean, I just do it. I mean, no one's holding you back, pal. Yeah. By the way,
what?
Jason Kelsey plus 3,500 O lineman to score a touchdown. I mean,
yes.
we have to at least mention this, don't we? Is this going to happen? I know he's a center, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. But
yeah, dude, I don't know. I don't know if that's happening.
I don't care. I'm probably going to bet it just because.
Has that ever happened? An actual center snap, like, hesitate and then get out there to the flats? I doubt it. Favorite drive prop? Length of longest drive, total number of scoring drives. What will be more, like total field goals made? Like, you tell me here, Jeff.
God, I mean, this one at this point, this is tough. So we got length of longest drive, 82.5, over under. I mean, I will take the under there. I mean, I think that, all things considered, how often do we even get teams starting within their own, 20-yard line? You get touchbacks involved and stuff. I would take the under on that. So, length of longest scoring drive, over 80 So now I'm just confusing myself. Under 82.5 would actually be the opposite. So over 82.5 is the side that I would want. But yeah, I mean, the longest drive, I would just, fade that. And then total number of scoring drives. This is the one where I'd be pretty interested in. I think this will be over. I would take the juice. It's minus 150, but 8.5 scoring drives. I mean, again, if we're projecting Philly for like a 30-point total here, I mean, I think that you're probably going to get 9 or 10 scoring drives. So I do like the over there. It's at minus 150 right now, but I wouldn't fade, the offenses to the extent of that. I think you'll see them go over that number.
I mean, Kansas City has had some long-ass scoring drives this postseason already, Pierce, including a franchise record 98 against the Jaguars. Of course, that was Chad Henne who led that drive.
Yeah, that was. That's actually a good correlation. If you think there's going to be some long drives, then maybe there's going to be fewer scoring drives, and that's where I would go.
Bingo.
Under 8.5. So I don't really mind trying to parlay those together with long drives and fewer drives. So under 8.5 scoring drives is where I am. I like both defenses. Philadelphia is, we spent a lot of time thinking that Philadelphia is going to win this game convincingly, and I'm still there. The defense is really good, but we don't want to completely disrespect Kansas City's defense either. They've made it to the Super Bowl, and they beat some good teams throughout the season. We give their offense a little bit of grief here and there, but their defense has been solid and stable all season, and I think they're probably going to rise to the occasion for the most part. So I feel really good with the under 8.5 scoring drives. I'm more curious to see what the over-under is on booking a hotel. It was like $3,000 a night, $4,000 a night for Phoenix right now. It's got to be crazy.
It probably is going to be crazy, guys, and it's not my credit card. It's the company's credit card. So to be honest with you, I don't care like a whole lot right now, but we've got our hotel rooms booked because Monday through Friday next week, all of our programming coming to you live from Radio Row. Folks, DraftKings, this is our first appearance at Super Bowl Radio Row. We got a delicious, beautiful studio desk, live programming. The DraftKings News Twitter account just pushing out a press release about 20 minutes ago. Check it out because honestly, it is too long to read right now and we are running out of time and I've got to say goodbye, but we are live, The Sweat, 11 o'clock Eastern time, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. local time out there in Arizona. Guest galore, cannot wait, including Jeff Ulrich. Everybody, thanks so much for watching this week. When we see you on Monday morning, we'll be on Radio Row in Arizona. Let's go, baby. Super Bowl 57 is here.